Hi guys, it's Kelly here, and we are back with day 2. We are working with Susie's Birthday Notes Paintables from Simon Says Stamp. And so this is where we left off yesterday, just a basic coat of one color. Still looks super pretty, but today we're going to concentrate on the shading. So these are the colors that I prefer to use for my reds, like my go-to red combination. Yesterday we were talking about buying your Copics and the way to select them. Now, if you look at my red combination, it is a R32, an R35, an R29, and an R59. So if you were buying a Copic blending family, the way that they suggest that you buy them on Copic's website, you wouldn't have anything near this color combination. They're kind of just all over the place, but they work really well together to get a true deep red. You can shade these letters however you want. However you decided to do your doodles yesterday, just go with whatever you feel like is going to make your piece yours. I decided I wanted to do a gradient on each letter, and the gradient is always going to be different. So for this one, I went from the bottom up. For the N, I'm going to go from the side. We'll see as we move along. So since I have the red markers out, I'm just doing all of the areas that I decided to color red. So for this flower, I'm leaving the outside edge light, and I'm adding just little half moons of shading toward the center of the flower. So it's going to get darker as the petals get closer to the center. And then I'm just going to blend that out with my lightest color. And color in that ring the lightest color as well, the ring that's around the flower. For these little, I almost want to call them tulips, but they're not tulips. I don't know, little bell flowers? Whatever. Those flowers, the hang flowers, the ones that are hanging down. It's very technical. But anyway, so for those ones, I just did a little bit of light shading, flicking my marker using a really light hand. They call this the feathering technique, and it's one that took me a really long time to be able to get comfortable with. So if you're having a hard time doing it, just keep at it. It does take a little bit of practice to get comfortable with it and to get good blending with it. But I'm sure whatever you're doing is beautiful, so don't stress too much about it. So here's again talking about those color combinations. For my quote-unquote orange, my lightest color is a yellow and my darkest color is a red. So you don't have to stick with your color families. If it blends nicely together, if you like that color combination, then you do you. I mean, whatever is gonna go for whatever's gonna get you to the look that you're going for. I preferred to do this particular color combination with a red as my darkest color, and you can see I'm not adding very much of it, just a little bit for a pop of contrast. But the reason I went with the red is because the red is right next to it, so it just kind of lent itself nicely to blend those colors in. And then the same thing for these flowers. I did the shading where it was on the darker was on the inside. And I'm not going to show you both orange flowers because I did exactly the same thing. And this video is already relatively long, just because I wanted to go over everything with you as I was doing it. I mean, I say relatively long, but it's about the same length as every other video I normally make. Yesterday's was short. And again, I'm coloring the ring with the lightest color. So once I did all the oranges, then I'm going to go on to the yellows. Yesterday, we were talking briefly about the yellows, and when you're buying your Copics, how you don't want to buy like a Y00, Y02, and a Y04 because they're all like pretty similar in color. So for me, when I want a brighter yellow, I go for the Y00, the Y02, and a Y08. The Y08 is called Acid Yellow. Which I think is a terrible name, but it's super bright yellow and I love it. And then for the darkest color, I went with a Y26. You can shade yellows with YRs or oranges, or you could shade them with browns. You don't have to stick to a Y family. It really just depends on what you're going with. For the center of the flowers, I'm going to do what they call stippling. If you ever took a high school art class, you're probably familiar with this. That's where I learned it. And basically, it's just using a series of dots to do your shading, and it gives you some texture. And since it was such a large area, I really wanted to create that texture within. For the actual tulip, This one looks like an actual tulip. I just colored it as if it was one solid piece. Now you could do this where you split up the colors where the little loops are, or where you do maybe like the darker color on top and lighter toward the bottom. Like, you really can shade these however you want to make them your own. I also, while I had my yellow out, did the stamen of the flowers. I'm going to do the leaves, and I'm only going to show you just a couple of leaves when we get to that point, because I just thought it would be really monotonous to do it all over again. So for this checkered board, I'm doing the shading from the left to the right because that's how I had already started with the N, and I just thought that that would make sense. So I'm just adding literally lines, just lines of green to do my shading. I'm not doing any flicking. I was worried about it bleeding out. So I'm just doing lines of color, and even with just the lines, it gives it some depth. And you'll also notice that as I'm doing this, I'm going over where the lightest color has already been put down, because Copics blend best when the paper is wet. So if you pre-treat it with your lightest color, you'll get a better blend. I colored my leaves a couple of different ways. On this one, I just did the darkest shading in the center. When we get to the blue-green next, I'll show you that I did it a little bit different. I just kind of mixed it up throughout the card front, so that way it wasn't always the same. And again, here with color combination. So I'm going from a BG11 to a BG45 to a BG05. There are no hard and fast rules about what you can use together. Don't be afraid to break out of the box if you got some colors that maybe they aren't right next to each other. It's okay. Just try it before you put it on a card front. I mean, the worst thing that can happen is you look at it and you're like, nah, I'm gonna pass. And then try a different color combination until you find something that you like. I mean, really, it's not, it's okay to quote unquote work outside of the box. That's what's going to make something yours versus somebody else's. And maybe you'll find something that's super cool and you never would have found it if you wouldn't have played around. So for these leaves, I decided I was going to do just one side darker instead of doing one in the center. So I'm just using those lines again, so just like I did with the O, just using lines of color and then blending that out. I didn't even go over it twice because it wasn't really necessary. I went ahead and colored all of the other leaves, so everything is good to go on the leaf front. For the D, I am just shading from the bottom up. Again, I had already kind of started that with the E. So I just wanted some continuity throughout the card because there's so much going on here. We got a lot of different patterns, we got a lot of different colors, and so if you can try to keep some things similar, it will help your card read better. So just really simple light hand feathering, same thing that we've been doing. Now, blue is so underrepresented in this card front, which makes me really sad because blue is my boyfriend. I love blue. I just do. I love it so much. And somehow it got severely underrepresented. Not really sure, but that's all right. It still came out pretty, even though there's not a lot of blue. For the berries, for each one, no matter what color I colored them, I did them the same exact way. I added a small dot of dark at the base and then filled in the rest of the berry with a lighter color. This is going to give them a little bit of a highlight. Now, for the A here, it's kind of difficult to work around these little polka dots. And I tried really, really hard not to color in the polka dots. Just because we're not doing the detail work yet. That's going to be tomorrow's video. So I tried to stay around the polka dots. That didn't end up happening, guys. I got so tired of trying to color around and I wasn't getting great blending. And so by the end of it, I was just like, whatever, I'll show you how to fix it and it's going to be fine. Or at least how I fix it. So I'm doing the blending. I'm only going partially up, just the same way, the gradient from the bottom to the top. And you're going to see when I put down the VO9, it's kind of super dark and it doesn't look like it's going to blend. It will blend. And in fact, coloring flowers, where I traditionally leave a white highlight, Violet flowers are some of my favorite flowers to color just because of the contrast of the colors, and I don't even like purple. Like, my sister got married and her colors were lilac and lavender. I know they sound like the same color. I promise you they are not. And I had to wear purple, and I was like, oh man, bummer. I don't even like it. But so I shaded these flowers the same way that I did the previous ones, just working from, I guess, what is technically the top, though it's the bottom of the flower, and doing the feathering so that everything just kind of matched. And the little areas, like the little teeny tiny petals on the ends, are kind of difficult to shade. I just do little dots of color until I am happy with the way that it's blending. You don't have to go over this twice if you're concerned about that you're heavy-handed. I know when I first started Copic coloring, I was very heavy-handed. Don't do it twice, just do it one time. The blending is going to be fine. I just got into the habit of doing it twice because I like the blend better. But blending it once, it sometimes just works out. For the Y, I decided I was going to do the shading from the left and the right, just so that it would be something different. If you've watched my other videos, you've heard me say before that the RVs are a little difficult. There isn't anything between the RV02 and the RV04. But when you're using them, the RV02 really bleaches out the RV04. Like, I don't know, it makes the color just disappear. Like, it's a magic trick. Also, you'll notice that my darkest color is RV69, but I'm only using one line of it, and you can just see that one line gives so much dimension. Like, it doesn't have to be a ton of color that you're putting down. Don't think that you need to saturate it. You don't. Just by putting in that little pop of contrast, it's going to just really help with that dimension so that your image doesn't look flat. So back to the RV02-04 war that I've been fighting forever. I just lightly go over it with the RV02. If I have to go back in with the 4, I do. I mean, it just is what it is. For this particular flower, if you remember from yesterday, this is the one I had to bleach out and put the pink on top of. I started with my darkest color because I only wanted to do it one time because I was very concerned about it bleeding out, because I had put the red on it, then I put the colorless blender on it, then I put the pink on it. So I wanted to make sure it wasn't going to bleed out all over the place. While we are doing all of this fun dimension with color, you don't want to leave out your white. This is something I think a lot of people do, and it's a way that you can kind of take your card up a notch. You have all this great shading for your colors, but if the white is stark white, it doesn't have any dimension. So you can use your C's, your W's, if you have toner grays. They also have neutral grays, whatever you got in your arsenal. This is one, I never thought that I needed to buy the grays. And now I use them in like every single card. And again, I'm just going to add a line of that C5, and that line is going to really just crank up the contrast for me. When you're coloring something white, you want to make sure you leave some white in your image. So for this J, I'm only using the C3 and the C1, and then I'm going to go around the edges with the colorless blender, just to make sure that some areas are still white. But you can just see, just from a couple of letters that we've done already, how those grays are really giving us some super awesome dimension that isn't something that you usually see in a card. So back to just doing those little lines so that we're not bleeding out of our little boxes there. And then for the Y, did the same thing. I just blended up. Most of the time I'm using the C1 and the C3, and that is sufficient. There are some areas like where there's large areas, like these stripes, they're super large areas. So using the C1 and the C3 might not necessarily feel sufficient. For the A, the white is going to be those polka dots, and since I went ahead and colored them over, I'm going to go back in with my colorless blender. I'm just going to use the very tip of the marker to clean up those polka dots. We're going to make them look better tomorrow when we add the detailing. But if you are happy with the way the card looks right now without adding any detailing, then this is a way that you can fix that. You just have to be patient, let it dry in between, and the colorless blender will push the color back out into the A. the again with the Y, I just added the C3 and the C1. The white areas were very tiny in this particular letter, and so I didn't want to lose all of my white. I just wanted there to be some dimension, but I didn't want to lose all of my white. So that is the card for today. And again, if you're happy, stop here. Tomorrow we're going to work on the background and doing some detail work. And so I hope you guys come back and see how you can build your card up even further to make it something that's a little extra special. So thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.